the 17th day of the second month. So now, hey guys. So, quick update. I still believe God is fulfilling the days of Noah on a Gentile calendar using the 17th day of the old 8th month, except that it would be the Julian 17th day of the old 8th month. In other words, rather than October 17th, it would be Julian October 17th, which falls on October 30th. And amazingly, October 30th just so happens to be 7/11 on the Enochian calendar. 7/11, of course, manifests Genesis 7:11, the verse where the flood start date is found. However, I believe that, in American time zones at least, we would get taken already on October 29th. That is, just before the start of the quote-unquote flood. Now let's take a quick look at the calendar spreadsheet so we can more easily see how these dates line up. So here in the Julian column, we see the days of Noah flood date of the 17th day of the old 8th month, aka October 17th, which is also Enochian 7/11. And not only is it Enochian 7/11, but it's also Moonsliver 7/7 and Rabbinical 8/8. 8/8 on the Jewish calendar is probably the reason why in Back to the Future, Doc Brown says, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour. October 30th is also the day before Halloween. And in Donnie Darko, the world ends on the day before Halloween. So from a numerical standpoint, the calendar alignments of this date are pretty amazing. Also, a couple of date durations bolster Julian October 17th's identity as the days of Noah flood date. So for instance, from the Revelation 12 sign to October 30th, or Julian October 17th, is 8 years, 1 month, and 7 days, encoding 817, or October 17th. And from the wedding ring eclipse back in 2023 to October 30th is 2 years and 17 days inclusive, encoding the 17th day of the second month. So now let's take a look at the 276 sign journey, which is also pointing to October 29th through the 30th. The last celestial sign on this journey was the first quarter moon in the ship of Sagittarius on Julian 16/9, aka Julian Pi. The significance of Pi here is that it encodes one lunar orbit, because Pi represents a circle, and one lunar orbit from the first quarter moon in the ship of Sagittarius takes us through one complete moon cycle to the next first quarter moon in Capricorn on October 29th through the 30th. And in the last video, I explained how the 276 to 277 degrees of the 276 sign and its inverted sister sign encoded the 276th to the 277th days of the year, October 3rd and October 4th, and how we needed to Julianize those dates because Paul was being escorted by the Roman centurion named Julius. Julian October 3rd through the 4th fell on October 16th and 17th, and so we were hoping for the rapture on that date. Well, Julius is actually mentioned exactly twice in Acts chapter 27, and I don't think that's by accident. Rather, it's a hint that we actually need to apply the Julian transformation twice, which would take us to October 29th through the 30th, because October 29th through the 30th is Julian October 16th to the 17th, and October 16th to the 17th is Julian October 3rd through the 4th. So we have two Julian transformations corresponding to the two occurrences of Julius in the Acts voyage narrative. October 29th through the 30th is also exactly 672 days after the 276 sign. 672 is, of course, 276 reversed. So we can see that October 29th through the 30th is the final piece of the puzzle in this grand 276 sign journey. And by the way, the last full solar eclipse occurred last year on October 2nd, and October 29th through the 30th just so happens to be exactly 12 months and 27 to 28 days after that eclipse, telegraphing the 276 sign date. And this date also solves the 457 riddle we've looked at in the past, which has to do with the Strong's numbers of Julius and Augustus in the first verse of Acts chapter 27, since both conspicuously contain the number 457, which is the 88th prime number. The mention of Julius and Augustus is a hint pointing to the old pre-Julian Roman calendar, because July and August were the 2 months whose names were changed by Julius Caesar when they switched over to the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar is a solar calendar, but the old Roman calendar it replaced was actually a type of lunar calendar. So these words, Julius and Augustus, are an old Roman calendar clue, and the 457s encode 88. And then if you remove the 457s, what remains is a 2 and a 5 encoding 2025. And in 2025, the 8th day of the 8th month on this ancient Roman lunar calendar falls on October 29th. So the date of the rapture seems to be cleverly encoded within the very first verse of Acts chapters 27 and 28. And by the way, I recently discovered that the 276 sign actually occurred in the 2776th year since the founding of Rome, which is pretty crazy considering that Rome is the destination of the Acts voyage. Now, October 29th also explains the so-called missing verse of the book of Acts, which is Acts 28:29, because the chapter verse signature, 28:29, encodes 10:29, because 2 plus 8 equals 10. That verse going missing is an obvious hint that we would go missing on October 29th. It's probably also not a coincidence that October contains 31 days and Acts chapter 28 contains 31 verses. And as you know, the biblical meaning of the number 29 is departure. And again, October 29th through the 30th is 7/11 on the Enochian calendar, which is interesting considering that the Acts ship voyage actually began on Enochian 7/11, since they set sail the day after the Day of Atonement fast. And as you know, the Day of Atonement is on 7/10. So next, let's take another look at Haggai. I explained in the last video how Haggai chapter 2 encodes the date of Jesus' birthday, September 24th. I also believe that the date of the rapture is encoded here. We've already discovered that the key to solving it lies in the hint given in Haggai 2:18, when it says to consider from this day, from the 24th day of the 9th month, and upward or forwards. In other words, it's saying some number of days inclusive after Jesus' birthday on September 24th. So then the question is, how many days? Well, this is just a guess, but since Haggai is the 37th book of the Bible, how about 37 days? And the 37th day from Jesus' birthday just happens to be October 30th. So that could be the solution. It's also kind of suspicious that Haggai 2:18 is followed by verse 19, and that verse ends the section because 18 plus 19 equals 37. Also, I don't know if you all remember that Korean plane crash from last year, Jeju Flight 2216. We had noted at the time that Strong's Hebrew 2216 is Zerubbabel, so we thought it had a connection to Haggai chapter 2. Well, that crash occurred on December 29th, which encodes 1029, since Deca means 10. All right, so now let's revisit the 8647 photo, which also encodes October 29th through the 30th. So if you recall, this 8647 photo was posted earlier this year by James Comey, exactly 8,647 days after 9/11/2001, and exactly 119 days before 9/11 of this year. Well, Julian October 17th is exactly 1 month and 19 days after 9/11 of this year. And in the photo, the 8 and the 647 are colored differently, so it kind of separates them into sections. And the sum of 647 is 17. So this is actually showing us 8/17, or October 17th. But I believe they're actually showing us Julian October 17th. And on top of that, the 8 is formed from 17 shells, again encoding 8/17, October 17th. And there are 29 small shells followed by 10 oblong shells encoding the 29th day of the 10th month, or October 29th. So in my opinion, this entire photo is encoding the dates of October 29th through the 30th, which are the two Gregorian dates that straddle Enochian 711, the flood date. So it's unlikely to be a coincidence that James Comey just so happened to upload this photo on IR17, aka 217, telegraphing the flood date signature, the 17th day of the second month. Alright, so next I had some miscellaneous points. First, I just wanted to point out that October 30th is 24 years, 1 month, and 19 days after 9/11/2001. So there's like some symmetry there. And also, Amos 8:10's "I will turn your feasts into mourning" probably refers to the feasts of the Gentile holiday season, in other words, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And October 29th through the 30th will be within the 930th month of Israel's existence. And when did Jesus first show up in the Bible? Well, he first shows up in Matthew chapter 1, which is the 930th chapter of the Bible. And it gets even crazier because October 29th is the 16th day of the 930th month of Israel's existence, and Jesus first shows up in the 16th verse of Matthew 1, the 930th chapter of the Bible. He shows up in Matthew 1:16 in the genealogy, where it says, "And Jacob begat Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom was born Jesus, who was called Christ." So yeah, that is amazing. All right, so now let's close by taking a look at the calendar spreadsheet again. So I'm looking for the rapture to occur on Wednesday, October 29th, or if you live in the Far East or Australia, that would be Thursday, October 30th. So basically a couple of days before Halloween, depending on where you live. And in the sky, there will be a first quarter moon in the constellation of Capricorn. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I thank you for watching. I hope it was an encouragement for you. God bless, and Maranatha.